Hey, it's Abbey from Turn Sounds. Invest in blue light blocker glasses if you're on screens after 4 p.m. Hey, I'm Abbey, a clinical nutritionist.
And I'm Shelby, a clinical exercise physiologist, and this is the Move Your Mind podcast.
We are sick and tired of people being led astray by false information about diet and exercise.
So join us as we discuss common misconceptions about food and fitness with the latest scientific research.
Let's get into it. Hello, Shelby.
Hello, Abbey.
Should we get straight into the topic today?
Yes. Should we tell people this is take 2 or just forget about the first one and pretend this is it?
Well, you've already said it now. We just lost the first bit of our episode.
Work. That's okay. We're starting again.
It wasn't too bad. I must admit I had a good 3 brain farts in that 10 minutes. So maybe it's the universe saying you need to re-record.
Just need to reset.
So here we are.
So straight into it. Go for it. What are we talking about?
Take 2. Today we are going to focus on PCOS. So Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome.
Yep.
I touched on it briefly at the start of our episode 2 episodes ago about period pain, and then with endometriosis discussion. I kind of slid it in there, but you and I both knew that I was going to talk too much and wasn't going to get to it.
Did not have time to give it the time it needed to be appropriately talked about.
Yes. So now is the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What is PCOS then?
Tell us, Abby.
So, yeah, as I said, it's Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome.
Which is a mouthful, so we're just going to say PCOS.
Yes. Definitely. We don't have enough time for that, and me talking as well. So by the name of it, you can imagine you would have PCOS if you had many cysts, so poly meaning many, and cystic meaning cysts, on your ovaries.
Yep. Sounds straightforward.
Yeah. So that was common knowledge. Back in the day, if you had many cysts on your ovaries, you had PCOS.
Correct.
And I still have heard that continue today a little bit.
Okay.
But common medical knowledge now is that PCOS is actually a condition of excess androgens in females with no other apparent cause.
So what's an androgen?
So androgens are primarily your male sex hormones. So
testosterone.
Yeah. So they're responsible for development of your secondary male sex characteristics like hair growth around your face, deepening of the voice, muscle mass, because testosterone you usually correlate it to increase in size, big guns. So in females, they are still there, but they're not, well, they should be in lower amounts.
Yes.
But in the case of PCOS, they are elevated.
Yep.
So they are present in too much, and it's from no other cause. Other causes, could be
like tumours or something like that.
So external tissue that secretes the androgens, it's not coming from a hyper-responsiveness of your ovaries that causes you to produce too much. So you can imagine, because now that we know PCOS is too much androgens, too much testosterone, then signs and symptoms would be related to females developing kind of male characteristics. So excess hair, like
on face,
but also on the body, like thicker underarm hair, or maybe even like lower abdominal region. Things like deepening of your voice can happen. Kind of expansion of muscle mass, I guess.
Without, again, like that kind of probable cause. Like you haven't been just hitting it really well in the
gym.
No.
Things like acne as well, because we have discussed in the skin episode that acne is kind of a testosterone or androgen-driven skin condition. Other things are irregular periods. Menstrual cycle becomes irregular because androgens kind of, I guess, oppose the female hormone. So if you have excess circulating androgens, it's going to disrupt the natural flow and the signaling of your estrogen and progesterone for ovulation and your menses.
Fair,
But interestingly, pain or period pain is actually not a symptom of PCOS. So we discussed, in the pain and endometriosis episode, that pain is... Well, we discussed in the episode before that.
If you listen to our podcast with Lee,
pain can be from a multitude of factors. And usually in relation to period pain, it's due to like immune responsiveness and inflammation around your like abdominopelvic region.
And that makes the system more sensitive, which will then relate to pain being felt.
Yeah. So the pain is kind of immune and inflammatory driven rather than hormone. So it's not really related to the endocrine system.
Which PCOS is. Yeah.
So PCOS is like hormonal, and then endometriosis is more autoimmune. So that goes without saying, when you have PCOS, you may still have pain, but it's not related to the hyperandrogenism, so too much androgens. It's not related to that. It probably comes secondary, and I'll discuss a little bit later with the types of PCOS why that could happen.
Cool.
It can be like systemic inflammation, but that's caused by insulin, which is driven by the testosterone. So you can see it's kind of a flow-on effect.
It's a secondary kind of complication or consideration. It's not an integral part of getting a PCOS diagnosis.
No.
Yeah.
And so people that may be living with PCOS, and you might be living in pain as well, and you think it's a direct consequence and you're going to have to live with that because you have PCOS, I'm telling you, no, not necessarily, because the excess androgens is kind of isolated from the pain, and because pain is immune and inflammatory, by helping and supporting your immune response and your inflammatory response, you can deal with the pain and still have PCOS. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just as a caveat there, if you're in pain, it doesn't mean you'll always be in pain no matter what the pain is from.
For sure, definitely.
So check on the previous episode for more on that. So absolutely, even if you have endometriosis and you're in pain, doesn't mean you have to be in pain forever.
Yes.
Even though it has more of a biological link than otherwise.
Yes.
Still doesn't mean.
Yes. Very good point.
Cool, thank you.
But back to the cyst type of situation, saying that you don't have to have cysts.
Yeah.
For that reason, polycystic ovarian syndrome is both overdiagnosed and underdiagnosed.
So like they see a cyst, PCOS, but also no cysts, don't check hormones. No, you're right.
You don't have it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of an issue, I believe, in the healthcare system. So if you have been diagnosed with PCOS, I want you to advocate for yourself and make sure that you've had androgens tested. That's a blood test.
Yep.
So you'll get testosterone, you'll get serum hormone binding globulin, which is another protein that binds to testosterone. And if testosterone is bound, it's inactive, and if it's free, it's active.
Yeah.
And obviously, if it's active, it's going to have more an effect of your body.
Do stuff. Yeah.
And then you also get free androgen index. So that's one of the things that is linked to PCOS, because if you have high free androgens, obviously you have androgens having a big effect in your body.
Yeah. And that's from your GP. That's who you'd talk to if you feel like you're being diagnosed without properly being looked at.
Yes. Yeah. So definitely just ask for a blood test, which I'd like to hope now that it's common practice.
I feel, GPs get that much continuing education.
Oh,
Like, it shouldn't be an excuse. They should know what's going on.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for someone that's not in the typical medical field like myself to know.
Yes.
I'd just hope that they know as well.
We can all hope.
Yeah, we can all hope.
But now, listeners, you know.
Yeah.
So you can speak for yourself as well. It's good.
Because you do something that, concerns me, which is why I wanted to talk about this, is that you could get someone going to a doctor saying, I have irregular periods, I am growing excess body hair, I'm in pain, which is a common thought symptom of PCOS, but as I've explained, it's not necessarily linked to that. But they go for an ultrasound, let's investigate what's going on, could be your ovaries, they see cysts and they go, you're diagnosed with PCOS, and this poor female is like, oh no, like what does this involve for me? Has a Google, adds onto Facebook pages, goes, oh, a low carb diet is what they usually say for PCOS, let's do that. So they go on a low carb diet and they actually don't have PCOS. And maybe the cause of their menstrual irregularities was under eating.
Right.
So they go low carb and pull themselves more into an energy deficit. Maybe it was because they're chronically stressed, which impacts the way that our brain communicates with our ovaries.
Yeah.
and then they continue their stressful lifestyle, add more stress by a restrictive diet, and put themselves deeper into that hole. So
not cool.
No, not cool at
Not
all.
cool.
So you need to know that you have high free androgens for your PCOS diagnosis.
Yeah, well, for any treatment, you need to actually know what the thing is, right?
Yeah.
Just know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, so definitely advocate for yourself. Ask for an androgen panel. If your doctor doesn't say, let's do it, because I know. But yeah, so then I guess on the other side, you can have a hormonal excess of testosterone and then go in for an ultrasound and have no cysts, and they say, well, you don't have PCOS.
And that's incorrect?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you have the clinical definition of excess androgens.
Cool. So anytime you have excess androgens without another cause, it's PCOS.
Without another cause.
Yep.
So definitely you'd have other investigations, process of elimination to be like, okay, well, your excess androgens are due to a disrupted communication between your brain and ovarian communication. So what usually happens, let's discuss that a little bit, in a normal human is that
you're abnormal if you have PCOS.
Well, in a
you can say normal pathways, maybe not normal humans.
Well, I don't
know,
an undiseased human.
I don't like that either.
I feel like I'm being really insensitive right now.
No, please, it's fine.
We're being too politically correct. In
normal humans,
okay, sorry, Shelby, stress me out. In ovarian cells, what happens is your hypothalamus, which we talked about actually, hypothalamus secretes FSH, so follicle stimulating hormone, which goes to your ovaries and gets the egg follicles growing and developing. And then LH, which is luteinizing hormone, once the growth of the follicles gets to a certain point and there's a dominant follicle which is ready to be released, so think that's the egg that goes into your fallopian tubes for sperm to fertilize it. LH will increase, luteinizing hormone. That's also secreted by your pituitary. Which
is kind of underneath your hypothalamus. Hypothalamus feeds into pituitary, which can store or make hormones, and then it goes out from there.
Yes, exactly. So LH is released, and then that goes to your ovarian cells and stimulates secretion of a progesterone derivative, which can then be converted to testosterone or estrogen.
Right.
So in those with polycystic ovarian syndrome, the conversion of the progesterone derivative to the testosterone derivative is increased.
Happens at a higher rate.
Yes. So that's why there's excess circulating androgens. I can't remember why I got there.
Because we were talking about having excess testosterone, and if that's an issue with brain connecting to ovaries.
Yeah.
So is that PCOS, or could that happen? Or is
that's PCOS. Yeah. Oh, that's what I was saying. Because PCOS is the brain communication. So it's when the communication with LH and your ovarian theca cells is dysfunctional. That's PCOS. So the direct, and that's why it's ovarian syndrome, because it's related to your ovarian communication. But yes, that's what happens. It's overexpressed, I guess.
Does that, result in less estrogen? Because there's more testosterone being made out of the progesterone-like thing?
Not necessarily. It doesn't mean your estrogen's going to go down, because the pathways have different mechanisms. So you can still have your estrogen going at a kind of within range production.
Okay.
But then it's the other pathway. Just picture the progesterone derivative, an arrow going down to estrogen, so that can still go.
Cool.
But then your arrow going out to testosterone is like big. So
it's not one or the other. It's this one, but then this one's got more. Yeah.
So in blood tests, you might see your estrogen within range, and your testosterone will be out of range. So you're dominant in testosterone, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you got any questions
Not so far. That sounds good.
with that?
Yep.
So let's go into the types
Yes.
of PCOS
Yes.
because there are four.
There are more than I
types.
knew of. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I knew of 2. So
And
go
this
for
will
it.
link into the insulin, which I discussed at the very start.
Yeah.
So, 4 types. You've got insulin-resistant PCOS. You've got post-pill PCOS. You've got inflammatory PCOS. And you've got adrenal PCOS.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll start with the insulin-resistant one because that's the most predominant.
Yep.
I think it's like 45 to 70% of individuals with polycystic ovarian syndrome have the insulin-resistant type.
And I'll talk about that a lot in the next episode. We're going to talk about exercise and PCOS, and a lot of that relates to the insulin resistant type.
As we've discussed, exercise can enhance your insulin sensitivity.
But it is the predominant type.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And that's why sometimes, or commonly, weight gain or weight issues is correlated with polycystic ovarian syndrome because insulin resistance and kind of obesity are quite linked.
And then you can think type 2 diabetes, like the things that happen to type 2 diabetics from a weight gain perspective.
Yes.
Is what's happening here.
Yes. So when I was researching, I thought, like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So, like, does the high testosterone cause the insulin resistance or does the insulin resistance cause the high testosterone?
Where'd you get to?
The mechanisms aren't exactly definite. I think it's a bit of a cycle. So it's like the high insulin due to the insulin resistance. So remember, if you're resistant to insulin, your body doesn't use it properly. So it secretes more because it's like, oh, it's not working. Let's upregulate this because the issue might be that we don't have enough, but really it's because your body can't use it.
So insulin is a hormone that allows your cells to open up to glucose and use glucose as fuel. So in the issue of insulin resistance, insulin is there, but the receptors aren't seeing it.
Yes.
So then there's more and more insulin because the receptor isn't opening, which would finish off the feedback loop.
Yes.
But that's not happening. So they just go, oh, well, you must need more insulin.
And then your brain's still going, we need more.
And the receptors are going, oh, I ain't looking at you. I ain't looking at anything. Yeah.
And the more they're under stress, they're more like, no, we don't want you at
No,
all.
I don't want to. Thank you very much. You just keep swimming on by. I ain't having a look at you.
That's actually how I think about it.
And the glucose is like, use me.
It's just sitting there like, stop being ignorant.
Let
I'm
me
here. I love it. That's actually a very good explanation. So, the hyperinsulinemia, so high insulin, is an important factor in maintaining the hyperandrogenism.
Yeah.
So kind of like the higher the insulin, the higher the androgens or testosterone, and then it continues as like a feedback mechanism. So then, the high insulin acts directly to upregulate the androgen production in the ovarian theca cells. Don't worry about the word theca, it just means cell.
I don't know if this is a sidetrack or not. I know, or I am meant to understand, that having insulin resistance is lifestyle related, like almost completely. Can you have insulin resistance and it not be an issue with lifestyle behaviours? Do you know? I don't know.
I think in this, well, that comes back to the chicken or the egg. So you can have insulin. Yeah, that's a good question because it's like what comes first? Does the high testosterone cause you to be insulin resistant? But definitely lifestyle factors can potentiate the high testosterone than the high insulin.
Yeah, you're not going to help anything out by not having a proper diet or exercise regime.
Yes.
Right.
So maybe it's not a direct causative factor, but definitely a contributing factor. So then that comes into treatment.
Yeah. And we know it has a high prevalence as well. Like those things tend to happen together.
Because in the insulin resistant type PCOS, you probably kind of see the things typical of insulin resistance associated with type 2 diabetes. So the kind of generalized inflammation, think metabolic disease, elevated triglycerides as well,
and then
weight.
Physical inactivity and poor diet and things like that. Yeah,
definitely. So that links to how, as a natural medicine practitioner, that we can help insulin-resistant type PCOS. So you'll talk about it. Exercise.
Yeah.
Can definitely increase insulin sensitivity.
So much.
And then there's also specific ways of eating, which can support your glucose uptake, glucose transport, also reduce inflammation, which can contribute to more resistance. Fun fact, cinnamon and chromium, so cinnamon is like a herb, chromium is a mineral, they both upregulate glucose transport and uptake. So you can supplement with high amounts of them, therapeutic doses, for the glucose to go into your cells more effectively, which can definitely help.
Cool.
Another thing is like reducing GI load. So remember, GI is glycemic index. So if you lower, how do I explain this in the best way?
Good luck.
So a GI of food is how quickly a food is broken down to produce glucose. So if you're high GI, glucose elevates faster.
It's ready to go. It's out of there.
I highly recommend you guys watching this episode because the gestures of Shelby are actually fantastic. Right now she's doing a little running action with her hands.
Hi, it's going.
It's going real quick.
Going.
So it releases quickly. So then as a response, your insulin elevates fast to kind of uptake the glucose, which is being released fast. So by reducing your glycemic load, you're kind of keeping the glucose in your system a little bit lower, but also a lot more stable. So then the insulin isn't as required as much, if that makes sense.
So it's less like the roller coaster ride and more like that safari one that just kind of like goes around on the same level.
Yes, but also lower amounts. Because if you have excess circulating insulin, that can increase inflammation through a pretty complex mechanism.
Yeah.
So inflammation is related to a lot of negative symptoms, which we've discussed heaps. So by keeping the insulin low through dietary strategies, then we can reduce the consequent inflammation, which can then reduce the negative symptom.
Nice. So you're trying to get it from both sides as far as you can increase the uptake of insulin through the receptor. So I'm saying like you can use more insulin because of cinnamon and stuff, right? That would mean
more glucose.
But does that mean that insulin is being used because then the glucose is being took?
Well, it throws into the feedback loop. Okay. So if your body is taking more glucose in, it's like, our insulin is being effective. So then it won't release as much because something else is doing the job of insulin, but your body doesn't know that.
Oh, okay. So you're not, because I was going to say you're doing it both ways. You're using more insulin and you're getting less insulin released, but not necessarily the role of getting glucose in is being done by not insulin. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
But then your body doesn't know that, so then it reduces your insulin through that mechanism, but also then through your dietary choices.
Because then you're lowering the insulin release.
Yes.
Through diet.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. So there's less circulating insulin as a whole.
Yes. Yeah.
Then with GI, you can then add in more protein and more healthy fats to slow the release again to decrease the demand.
That was a good episode we did about digestion.
Was that one? Yeah, I was trying to think when we talked about that. We definitely have. So then in the case with the metabolic syndrome type of situation, with the elevated triglycerides and bad cholesterol, which is LDL, and decreased good cholesterol, which is HDL, we can then go into adjusting your dietary fat intake to promote like downregulation of your triglycerides and your LDL, and then an increase in HDL.
Yes.
So that's things like we know from a nutrition perspective that high saturated fats and trans fats increase LDL secretion, and then higher unsaturated fats, so monounsaturated, but also omega-3s can increase your good cholesterol. So we can go by that mechanism then to feed into the inflammation side.
And pair that with exercise and go.
Right. So, yeah.
I don't want to be forgotten.
Oh, hell no. You've got a whole episode coming up.
Yeah.
Be patient.
I know.
So that's insulin-resistant type covers.
And how do you know you have insulin-resistant type of PCOS?
Good question. Blood tests.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah. So if you're insulin resistant, you're going to have elevated fasting insulin.
Yeah.
And you're likely going to have elevated fasting glucose because the glucose can't be accepted into your cells.
Yeah, cool.
So, yeah.
So it's not a given that because you have PCOS, you are insulin resistant.
No,
you
it's
can
not.
be not.
You can have other types.
Yeah.
So another type is post-pill PCOS.
Yeah.
So it's quite common to experience like a temporary surge in androgens when you come off certain pills like Yasmin and Diane and Brenda.
Okay.
I won't go into why, but yeah, some people when they go off the pill, they develop the male secondary sex characteristics associated with PCOS because their androgens are elevated.
Wow.
In terms of treatment for that, I wait it out.
Yeah.
Because as we discussed, when you're on the pill, secretion of your ovulatory hormones are suppressed and you don't have the cycle. It's kind of a withdrawal bleed. So it takes time after you go off the pill for your body to then establish that communication between your brain and ovaries, which allows for the regulation of your conversion of your progesterone type to either your estrogen or testosterone.
Yeah.
So after coming off the pill, your body can definitely get confused.
Absolutely. Poor thing.
Yeah. And it can take a good 3 to 4 months for your body to be like, oh, we actually need to recognize how much estrogen we need to produce when we're signaled by LH and FSH, which it hasn't had for a long time.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Be patient with your body.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then you've got inflammatory PCOS. So we've discussed that inflammation is highly linked to PCOS. So you have inflammatory PCOS if you meet the criteria for PCOS, but you don't have insulin resistance.
Yeah.
And you haven't just come off the pill.
Yeah.
And you have signs and symptoms of inflammation, like unexplained fatigue, bowel problems like IBS or SIBO, headaches, joint pain, or like an inflammatory skin condition like acne or psoriasis or dermatitis. So if your PCOS is correlated to inflammation, treatment would be down-regulating inflammation, which we've talked about heaps. So that's like reducing stress, both the way you put your body in stress, but also external stresses around you, eliminating inflammatory foods, which we've talked about.
We have
dairy, A1 dairy proteins, and things like gluten in some individuals.
Yeah, that's
only
right.
some, not all.
Yeah. Is that
Refined
omega-6
sugar.
has a role in inflammation? Oh, I'm learning.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So changing the fat ratio, like prioritizing your omega-3 fats because they thread into your anti-inflammatory cytokine release, whereas the omega-6 and saturated and trans fats, they thread into more your pro-inflammatory cytokine release.
Yeah.
And we talked about as well with endo how intestinal permeability can contribute to the excessive immune response because food particles are getting where they shouldn't be. So then we can go into assisting with increasing your gut lining integrity through nutrients like zinc and glutamine, and reducing personal dietary triggers. So that requires seeing a health professional for them to identify that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. So you can already see how the treatment plan would differ depending on
your
the
type.
Yep.
Which is a grind. I like that word. It's a grind of mine when it's like PCOS, low carb. It's like, well, no, because are they insulin resistant? I actually have worked with a client that was diagnosed with PCOS back when I was studying and was on a low carb diet. No restoration of periods, still didn't have their period. It wasn't post pill. And I said, get your hormones tested. Let's see if you have elevated fasting insulin and glucose. And they didn't. And I said, you don't need to be on a low carb diet. And I said, you're stressed. You're exercising a lot. You need to increase your carbohydrates for your body's demand. She got a period back.
Yay.
Right? That was like one of the most favorite things that I did in my studies.
That is amazing. And that's quite an opposite treatment, right? Either low carb or high carb.
Yeah.
You have to have a proper look into what's going on to be able to pick the correct one.
Yeah. Yep. So that's why you need to see a health professional and advocate for yourself. Know what's going on in your body.
So
And that's why we're doing this, right?
Absolutely.
So people can listen and be like, I need to be in charge of my health.
Absolutely.
I need to know.
Yeah. And you don't need to
going on.
understand all the ins and outs,
No.
but you need to know that the person looking after you cares enough to know. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, there's adrenal PCOS, which accounts for a very minute, it's like 10% of the cases. And that's just, I won't go into that. That's for another day. I think
Well done.
the main three, I've actually
I'm proud
censored
of
my
you for-
information. Shelby's eyes just lit up when you were like, she's not going too in depth. But yeah,
if you have adrenal PCOS, message us and we'll talk about it.
Yes. Just one last thing I wanted to say is that other than the underlying mechanisms, obviously by reducing testosterone secretion, you can also help with polycystic ovarian syndrome and the related symptoms. So,
Sorry, in any of the types?
Yeah,
cool.
because they're all driven by that.
Still
That's
the main.
diagnostic.
Yep.
So there's minerals like zinc, which can help downregulate a certain enzyme, which transforms testosterone to a 10 times more potent form called DHT.
Okay.
I won't say the name. That doesn't matter. But you can...
I'm so proud of you today. Look at you go.
You can have, therapeutic doses of zinc because it kind of inhibits the enzyme, which makes your body produce a more potent
cool.
form. And I see that a lot in acne people. They will have that increased conversion even at the side of their skin. So within their skin follicles, testosterone can convert to THT.
Yeah, right. Yep.
DHT. And then there's a certain compound called inositol that's very, very prescribed among natural medicine practitioners.
Yep.
I believe it was even approved on the same level as like the pill for symptom management because it helps the clearance of testosterone.
Cool.
But don't go buying inositol off iHerb or anything. Please go see someone because you can have too much and then decrease your testosterone too far down and then you've got another issue. Yeah. So please see a health professional. This is not for you to self-prescribe. This is for you to realise that there's avenues for treatment and you need to see someone to direct that. But there's hope. That's what I want to say. Yeah. There's ways.
So PCOS, because too much androgens. So by decreasing your androgens, do you no longer have PCOS? Or is it something you always have to keep on top of? Or is it a cycle you can disrupt and not have anymore?
That's a very good question. I believe with exceptional management, you actually can stop the cycle. Yeah. But once again, you've got to look deeper. So if you've got this excess responsiveness in your ovaries, yes, you can help clearance of testosterone, but that underlying pathway is going to keep on going. Yes. So it's quite hard to reverse the underlying pathway. It can be done.
Yeah. But if you otherwise just stayed on top of a treatment that worked for you, it would be possible to keep testosterone down indefinitely.
Yes, definitely for management of symptoms, maybe even restoration of menstrual irregularity. Wow, my words. Because we know that the androgens interfere with the kind of more female dominant reproductive hormones. So yeah.
Cool.
Does that answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just popped in. So do the cysts have anything to do with anything as far as symptoms or infertility or menstrual cycle?
Symptoms,
like they don't stop ovulation or anything. That is all endocrine driven?
No, actually the cysts can be a sign of impaired ovulation. So not the cyst causing impaired ovulation.
Yeah, okay.
There's certain types of cysts, follicle cysts, I believe.
Yeah.
If your egg is producing if your ovaries are producing follicles and they grow, and then usually like it bursts for the release. If it doesn't burst, if you don't ovulate, then you get this little mound, which is a cyst. So a little protrusion.
Yeah, so that's why the cysts aren't diagnostic.
No.
Because they're almost a symptom in themselves, almost. Could be. Not maybe symptom's not the right word, but a development from the hormone imbalance.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. Yeah. But then cysts can be from like endometriosis, like what are they called? I can't remember the name for them. I should know this. But if you've got endometriosis, endometrial-like tissue that deposits on your ovaries, and that's going to cause a little mound, which is like a cyst.
Like a lesion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's about 3 other different types of cysts, but yeah, they're not diagnostic for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think we covered it all.
So cool. So you're happy with that. So if you have PCOS, make sure that your hormones are being tested.
Definitely.
Make sure you know which type it is.
Definitely.
Then there are nutritional changes you can make that can then symptom manage.
Yes. And also kind of downregulate the severity of the underlying imbalance.
Cool.
I never like to say reverse it, because you don't want to say that. You want to be realistic in the fact that there's certain things in our body we can't control, but we can certainly manage.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, nice. And bring it back to a more normal level.
Yeah, and reduce the severity of the subsequent negative issues like inflammation, which cause so many issues.
Or insulin resistance that is then linked to so many things as well. Cool.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Thanks.
Perfect.
We done.
Thank you.
We good.
Amazing.
Make sure to message us if you have any more questions.
It would be at moveyourmind.podcast on Instagram or Abbey_Renee_ on Instagram. Or we have turnsounds@gmail.com. We have so many ways you can talk to us. We want to talk to you.
Yeah, I know.
Got so many ways.
Please let us know.
We even have a contact form on our website, turnsounds.com. Flick us a little link in there. We can talk to you through that.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
Please. And talk to me if you've been diagnosed with PCOS.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would love to help you.
A more specified, individualized plan, go see Abbey for sure.
Would love to help.
And then you can come see me.
Yeah, when we chat about exercise, because you got some tricks up your sleeve.
We'll see.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.